and the number one reason for the vote for me was how they felt about our campaign and the issues that we ran on. But look, there is also that segment of this population who voted against Roy Moore. I understand that. I get that. But you know what? That's not a bad thing.
Doug Jones addressing the media today following last night's special election to fill Jeff Sessions' old Senate seat. Alabama had not elected a Democrat senator since 1992. And remember, Donald Trump won 62% of Alabama's vote in 2016. So what exactly does the Roy Moore loss mean for the Republican Party? Where do they go from here? What are the lessons? Here to discuss, Liz Peek, a FiscalTimes.com columnist, also contributor for The Hill. Carrie Sheffield, a conservative commentator and Bold founder and CEO, and back with us as well as Tammy Bruce. And Liz, you wrote an article about this, and what are your thoughts? Because I think Republicans would be making a major mistake if they just wrote this off as just only having a bad candidate.
Well, I think it really was a bad candidate, but I agree there are lessons to be learned here. The article I wrote really had to do with the whole issue of sexual misconduct and how it's being politicized. I think that both parties and the country at large has to be incredibly careful about this. Because I think women could really be hurt if people begin to conflate serious charges of rape and sexual attacks with inappropriate behavior. And then all of a sudden, first of all, the workplace changes enormously. It doesn't benefit women particularly. And their complaints can begin to be belittled by people. I think it's really risky territory, Charles, that we're entering into here.
You know, Carrie, you break down the votes last night, and a lot of critics of the Republican Party within the party who said that it's an old party that should have been reaching out to blacks, Hispanics, women, millennials, college-educated whites, that last night was a prime example of why that's a real danger spot coming up for the party.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think no matter where you were, if you're on the conservative side, last night was a disappointing night. I love the words of Martin Luther King, though, that we must accept finite disappointments, but we will not give up infinite hope. So I do have infinite hope that.
What specifically were you disappointed about? What was one of the key issues for you?
Well, so I mean, the fact that someone who is not pro-life is now going to go to the Senate, to me that is sad. And then in terms of Roy Moore, the messaging, I agree with Liz around women and how we treat them, how just, the overall climate right now is obviously, I'm glad we're having this conversation where we can talk about these issues openly, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the conservative movement is being a leader in this and not a lagging indicator in this. So I actually think that there is a silver lining in every case. So right. To say that we can have parameters here, this is a wake-up call. This is we have standards. Well,
not every Republican was sad about this, right? Some of the more establishment types thought it was a good thing. In fact, Peter King was very vocal in his admonishment, if you will, of Steve Bannon. Let's roll that.
Steve Bannon, that the president did the right thing in getting rid of him from the White House last summer. I don't consider him a conservative. I know he raised himself as some Irish Catholic working guy. To me, he just looks like some drunk that wandered in off the street. And I say that, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I think he's brought an element of hate into politics, right. Racial division, and I think it backfired in Alabama. It really did. And it's going to it backfired in the White House. It made a very difficult situation for people who worked in the White House. And I just don't see what Steve Bannon brings to the political scene, to the governmental scene.
Look, I think that kind of comment irritates most people. I don't think Peter King should be talking about how someone appears when they walk into a room. That's just petty stuff. But the reality is that you're seeing a part of the Republican Party wanting immediately to place blame on Steve Bannon. And look, there's a lot of hands in this that need to relook at how they handled this. A lot of people felt that Mo Brooks, who could have been the perfect candidate, pushed out of the way by Mitch McConnell because he wanted Luther Strange, who would be more answerable to him, as opposed to a man like Brooks who'd be answerable to the president. So there's a lot of these kind of behaviors going on that ended up being a perfectly expected Republican screw-up. But ultimately, I think what you're looking at here is, I'm not, of course, I don't know if any of us are going to miss a Judge Moore. I won't. But what I am is a partisan for the United States, and I want the president's agenda to work. In the long term, I think this might be a good thing because it's a reminder that we need to have great candidates that can win in general. No one should take anything for granted. But at the same time, in the short term, you're looking at still the president's going to have to work hard. The big problems still for the president are McCain and Collins and Murkowski, not necessarily Mr. Jones. And remember, the name Scott Brown. Another special election, he won. He could not win the general the real election.
Well, the conventional wisdom is that.
And I don't think Jones is going to be in the Senate for a long time.
But what about this, guys? The 2017 scoreboard, you have the Democrats gaining a U.S. Senate seat, Alabama, governorship, New Jersey, the chamber of Washington Senate, control of 2 states, New Jersey, Washington. They picked up 32 legislative seats versus the GOP only 4. I mean, that's momentum. I don't know if that in politics they call that a wave, but can that become a tsunami?
I think, though, let's also remember Jon Ossoff, who lost big time in the Georgia special election. It hasn't all been one way or the other. Jon Ossoff, in my view, is a very similar situation. He was just a terrible candidate, kind of an empty suit that the Democrats put enormous amount of money behind. So, you know, I think it really comes down to the candidate.
But it was a very competitive race in a very red district. It should not have been competitive.
True.
And Charles, to your earlier point about reaching younger people, so the messaging from Roy Moore, he was saying very incredibly incendiary things about Muslims, about gay people, things that as a younger person...
Well, the Democrats were brilliant, to be quite frank with you, to bring up a lot of the race things in the last week. I mean, it's been amazing. Some of the things that I heard, you know, like complimenting the positives of slavery, it got out the black vote big time. All right, ladies, thank you all very much.